Report story. Chapter 3. We're having an intervention. Iida said from Izuku's bed. What for? Izuku asked nervously. He really had no idea what the reasoning could be for the half of Class 1A to be in his room. I guess we should start it like this. Shoto interrupted. Are you and Uraraka dating? It took a moment for Izuku to process what Shoto had just asked, and when he did, his face flared red. What do why you guys mean? Izuku stuttered out, covering his face. Are you in a romantic relationship with Ochako Uraraka? Tokiyami said plainly. What? No. Izuku blurted out. The rest of the class looked at each other like they were having a silent conversation. Then they all turned back to Izuku and Kirishima spoke up. Well, why aren't you? He questioned. Izuku shut the door behind him as he slumped up against it, unbelievably embarrassed. What do why you mean why not? Izuku was so flustered he basically couldn't understand a regular conversation. Let's be honest, Midoriya. Denki started. It's obvious you have a thing for Uraraka. I don't even try to deny it. Everyone said at the same time. Izuku looked at all of them individually, and sighed in defeat. You caught me, he admitted. Even though he had been dreading anyone figuring out his crush, as soon as he said the words, it felt like a weight had been lifted off his chest. He let out a deep breath. It had been a long while of keeping his confused feelings to himself, and now it was as if that nervousness had just disappeared. I didn't actually believe that he was going to admit it, to be honest. Denki said after they recovered from their shock. So, I have a thing for Uraraka. Is that all this was about? To get me to say it? Izuku was obviously still confused as to the reasoning behind the intervention. So, are you going to do anything about it? Also, what were you two doing alone this morning? Kirishima asked. First of all, she actually wanted to work out this morning. She said she wants to get stronger. Izuku was interrupted by a wave of oohs from the group, and he scowled at them. But I don't think I want to do anything about it. I can't risk getting distracted from our studies. Plus, she probably doesn't like me back, Izuku muttered. Izuku. This time, it was Iida speaking. He walked over and put a hand on Izuku's shoulders. I'm not going to beat around the bush. Iida continued. Grow a pair. Izuku stared at Iida for a moment, not realizing what he was saying, until he finally got it. I. Izuku was too flustered to form a coherent statement. Guys, I think it's time we spare him from his misery. Tokiyami suggested. The group nodded and started to leave, leaving Izuku to stand alone in the middle of his floor, still shocked at what had just transpired. As Iida was about to leave, he put a hand on Izuku's shoulder once again. Just think about it, you like her. There's no point in not asking her out. Sometimes you have to have some fun. I want to see you have a fun time sometimes. As your friend, who knows, she probably likes you back. I've seen the way she acts around you. With that, Iida left and Izuku was alone once more. He slumped to the ground with a groan. What am I going to do? Promoted stories. You'll also like. Hurt cuz I love you to death Izuocha. Ha. 8.9K 141 Class 1A is now Class 2A and is working to be better heroes due to events that had happened before. Deku has gotten strong feelings toward Uraraka during the summer as The hero who sings with a smile 39.8K 368 high. Guys, this is my first story I write on Wattpad. I hope you like it after all. Fluke 11.4K 802. Will edit once I'm free. N. This is a work of fiction, and any similarity with other works is purely coincidental. Excuse grammatical errors and misspellings. Eng. The Kings and Queen, Yandere Wakfu X Reader, 59K 1.8 Kyonder. Wakfu X Reader. Images do not belong to me unless stated. Wakfu does not belong to me, it belongs to Enigma. This is being rewritten in another book on my profile. Own Fluke a day 112K 8.2 kiloamperes. Collection of short Own Fluke over 365 days. Please check the second book for the rest of the day's update. Zero Deku Onishots 31.6K 798. Because of circumstances, this book won't be continued, unfortunately. Feel free to check out my other stuff. Thank you for understanding. Return of Mokuden discontinued 3.5K 45. This story is officially up for adoption. If anyone is interested, message me or comment on the story. Meanwhile, Ochako was trying to run away from her problems, but Momo had barricaded the door. Ochako, talk to us. Mina protested. No. Ochako changed gravity on herself and fell to the ceiling. She scrambled over to the corner and sat on top of the dresser, trying to hide even though she was in plain sight of all the girls in the room. Ochako, it's just a harmless conversation. We won't even tell anyone. Ochako just shook her head. She knew her cheeks were flaming red and didn't want to embarrass herself anymore. The instant Ochako had asked what they were doing in her room, Suyu had said, "We wanted to ask you about Midoriya." That had been enough to throw her into an embarrassed fit, and she had tried to escape. Now is the time when I wish I had a more destructive quirk. I could blast my way out. Ochako, we're not leaving until you talk to us, Toru said from her bed. I don't wanna, Ochako grumbled. Okay, we'll just talk to you then, Suyu surmised. So what were you and Midoriya doing out alone this morning, It took a second for Ochako to realize what she was implying, but when she did, her cheeks flared to life once again. No, no, no. It's not like that. Ochako shook her head so fast she almost gave herself whiplash. We were just doing a morning workout. Ochako, you literally wake up less than an hour before class starts. Mina said blankly. It's the truth. Ochako protested. Why were you up so early doing a workout then? Kyoka asked smugly. I want to become stronger. Deku is always so strong. Ochako was rambling before she even realized how big of a hole she was digging herself. He's strong because he works hard and everything. I want to get stronger. Just like. Just like Deku. Right. Suyu finished. Ochako looked down at all her friends from on top of the dresser. Well, I just dug myself a hole. Ochako blushed and took a deep breath. Okay, fine. She practically shouted, I like Deku. When the words left her mouth, she didn't know if she regretted it or was happy she finally got it off her chest. The second she finished, there was a choir full of squeals from all the other girls in the room. Ochako buried her face in her hands in embarrassment. Eek, I can't believe we got her to admit it. Toru squeaked, squirming. It's not like we didn't already know it. Kyoka pointed out. Wait, you guys already knew? Ochako asked, confused. Well, duh. Mina said. You're not exactly very secretive about it the way you always talk about him or you always hang around him. The entire class knows about it by now. Well, except for Midoriya. Suyu added. Yeah, he's pretty dense. Momo said. Well, girls, I think we've given her enough to think about. Let's let her rest. Ah, party pooper. Toru complained as she walked for the door with everyone else. Just before she left, Suyu looked up at Ochako on top of her dresser. She was gently staring off, deep in thought. Ochako. Suyu got her attention. Go for it, you won't be holding him back. He even needs the extra fun sometimes. Be courageous. You might have to take the first step. Midoriya is too awkward sometimes. And with that, Ochako was alone in her room, left to think about what she was going to do. The next few days were amazing and awkward at the same time for both Izuku and Ochako. They still hung out, but there was a mix of awkward tension, but also relaxation at the same time. Having gotten their feelings off their chests, it was finally like Izuku could talk to her without getting as flustered as normal. Like accepting his feelings had lessened the burden. Not to mention that Izuku and Ochako were both actively contemplating how to ask the other one out. They went on another morning workout on Sunday. Izuku had spent time to make a workout plan for Ochako just like All Might had for him, but it was far less intense. It mostly involved a diet and workout times. Ochako was grateful for all the help he was showing her. When Monday rolled around, Izuku was exhausted. Between working out as normal and practicing his long-range attacks every morning, and long nights thinking about and texting Ochako, he wasn't getting much sleep. Not to mention that he had spent his entire Sunday afternoon with Mirio, visiting Eri once again. Now, Izuku was sitting in homeroom, waiting for class to start. Everyone was in their little cliques, and that included Izuku. He was sitting alone with Iida and Uraraka, talking about their homework that was due the next week. As usual, Izuku was ahead and had already finished it, but Uraraka was caught up on part of it. You see, here you first need to take the derivative. You can test for whether a function is decreasing or increasing based on whether the first derivative is positive or negative at a certain point. Izuku tried to explain. I hate calculus. Uraraka complained. How do I take this derivative? She pointed to a set of functions on the sheet. Well, it's a product rule. So first you. He was cut off by Aizawa walking into the room. In your seats, he grumbled. I'll show you later. Izuku promised, walking over to his seat with a smile. The entire class just stood and looked at Aizawa for a moment before he finally decided to talk. Good morning. I was told I have to tell you about the next tournament the school is holding. Tournament. The entire class yelled. Yes, it's a tournament similar to the final event of the sports festival, except with only the hero courses. Aizawa finished once the class quieted down. The rules are the same thing. It will be separated into a Class 1A bracket and a 1B bracket, and the winner of the brackets will face off for the championship. I'm so gonna win. Kirishima called out. No, you aren't. Stupid hair. I will take the indisputable first place this time. Bakugo yelled to the entire class, glaring at Shoto. There is one more thing. Aizawa interrupted. He pulled out a small hat full of tiny slips of paper. This time, it will be 2 versus 2. I have the names of everyone in this class here. I will choose random teams. The point of this exercise is to teach you how to work together with other pro heroes that will be out on the field. First team, he said, reaching into the bag he pulled out two slips of paper. Aoyama and Jiro. Oh, come on. Kyoka protested quietly. Apparently Aizawa heard. You will not have any control over who you need to work with in the field, so this is what you get, like it or not. Aizawa scolded, pulling another slip from his hat of goodies. Mina and Kirishima, Kota and Sato, Tsuyu and Kaminari, Shoji and Mineta. By now, Izuku was holding his breath, wondering who he would get paired with. Shiro and Bakugo. Izuku let out a breath. At least he didn't have to deal with Kachan for now, Todoroki and Tokiyami. That's a powerful pair, Izuku made a mental note. Yaoyorozu and Toru. That leaves four. Odds are I get pair up with Iida or Izuku. Blushed at the thought, yet was excited at the prospect of Uraraka. Ojiro and Iida. Izuku let out a pent-up breath. That leaves Midoriya and Uraraka. That is all. Tournament matches start Thursday and go all weekend. As soon as class was dismissed, the room exploded with chatter. Izuku's head shot across the room and looked directly at Uraraka, who met his eyes. Izuku rushed over. We're partners, Deku. Isn't it great? Uraraka cheered. Yeah, Izuku blushed. Why did the stupid lovebirds get paired together? So annoying. Bakugo complained. Heads turned towards Izuku and Uraraka, who both turned away from each other blushing. That's not like how it is, Izuku said, waving his arms around. This is going to be a crazy week. Ochako went through the rest of the day with her thoughts filled with how this Do's tournament was going to play out. The entire class had been dismissed for the rest of the days leading up to the tournament, in order to give time to prepare synergies and cooperation. Initially, Bakugo had not been very pleased with the fact that he would have to share the spotlight, in his words. The rest of the class was already out on the practice fields, figuring out what types of combos they could come up with. Ochako and Izuku, on the other hand, were sitting in Izuku's room, analyzing the competition. They were making detailed hero book pages for each team, writing out specific strategies they could use and what possible counters they needed to be prepared for. While Ochako had been initially excited to go practice something more practical, Izuku had insisted on this first, so Ochako went with it. Whatever she could do to get stronger is what she would do. Also, she got to be alone with Izuku for an extended period of time, which made her heart flutter. Based on the tournament sheet that Aizawa gave us, we'll be up against Yaoyorozu and Toru first. The other rounds are Kaminari and Tsuyu versus Aoyama and Jiro. Then it's Sato and Kota versus Shiro and Kachan. Then it's Todoroki and Tokiyami versus Iida and Ojiro. Then Kirishima and Mina versus Shoji and Mineta. Mineta. Izuku started to mutter up a storm. Deku. Ochako tried to reel him back into reality, to no avail. Based just on predictions, the winners in Kaminari and Tsuyu versus Aoyama versus Jiro will most likely be Kaminari and Tsuyu. The other team really has no way to deal with Kaminari hardening. Not to mention Tsuyu's mobility. Deku. Ochako tried again. Then no offense to them, but Sato and Kota really have no chance versus Shiro and Kachan. Then I'd say the other winners are Todoroki and Tokiyami, and Kirishima and Mina. That means if we win, then we would be going up against Kaminari and Tsu first. Izuku just kept going, no regard to how far off he was getting. Ah! Ochako groaned, pressing her fingers against Izuku's arm. He was enveloped in a pink glow, and immediately fell towards the ceiling, smacking right into the roof. Ah! Izuku shouted, hitting the roof with his head. At least I got him back to the world of reality. Sorry, you were muttering and wouldn't stop. Izuku stayed laying on the ceiling, grumbling. Sorry, I just really get into this stuff. Izuku grumbled. It's okay. For now, can we just focus on winning our first match? Okay. Izuku conceded. Can I get off the ceiling now? Oh, sorry. Ochako pressed her fingertips together, and Izuku fell off the ceiling with a thud. Normally, Ochako would feel bad, but for some reason right now it was just funny. Maybe it's just that I've spent so much one-on-one time with him these last 3 days that I've gotten more comfortable. Ochako shook the thoughts away. She was still getting constantly pressured by the rest of the girls to confess her feelings, but every time she started to prepare herself to, either someone walked in and intruded or she wimped out. Izuku pulled himself off the ground and sat himself down back in his seat, pulling out an empty sheet of paper from his hero notebook. I'm alone with Deku. Ochako realized, in his room. A blush surged to her face before she knew it. I could tell him right now, and there's nobody to intrude. Ochako thought. No, we're here to prepare for Thursday. Okay, so, here's something I thought of. Izuku started. Oh no, that's never a good thing. Ochako teased. A blush flashed on Izuku's face, but quickly receded. Ha ha, so funny, he said, expression flat at her joke. Anyways, the rules are that one of an entire team has to be either unable to move or out of bounds. Once one member leaves the arena, then they cannot come back in. Izuku explained. So what do you think they're going to try to do? It has to be something relying on Yaoyorozu quirk, as Toru's invisibility would not be very powerful on its own. And the bigger and more complicated something is to make, the longer it takes to make. Izuku hummed, placing his hand on his chin. He looks so cute. Like Ochako interrupted her, fawning when a thought struck her mind. Wait, I got it. Izuku interrupted his thinking, turning to Ochako, waiting. So what if they use Toru's invisibility to try to distract us or do something while Momo makes something that will win the match for them? Ochako explained. Izuku slowly nodded his head, expression brightening. And not to mention, we couldn't win if we couldn't see Toru. So we need a way to see her first and foremost. Izuku said, then jumped upright in his seat. I've got it. Let's go to the practice field. The dirt one specifically. He got up and rushed out of the door, not even realizing that he had left Ochako in his room alone. Ochako got up to chase him out of the door, but a small sound caught her attention as she reached for the handle. I am here, All Might's voice said with a small buzz. Ochako whipped her head around to see that Izuku had left his phone sitting on the desk in his rush to get out to the field. Ochako snickered at the text tone, thinking about how much it screamed, Deku. She reached over, and her hand stopped above the phone. Is this a breach of his privacy? She questioned herself. No, I'm just giving him his phone he left, she decided. When Ochako picked up the cell phone, the screen showed the text he had just received. Ochako forced her eyes away, not wanting to intrude on whatever conversation Izuku had been having with someone. Ochako walked for the door, knowing she would have to rush to catch up to Izuku, that he hadn't even noticed he left her behind. Ochako's hand reached for the handle, but she stopped herself again. I'm sure one look won't hurt, she rationalized. Hands slightly shaking at how bad girl she was being. Ochako looked at the phone screen. The background was a large picture of Izuku with All Might, but more importantly, he had a text from Kirishima. Ochako's breath stopped in her throat when she saw what the message read. When you gonna ask the girl out, Midoriya? A torrent of thoughts raced through Ochako's mind when she read the text. What girl? Who is he going to ask out? Could it be me? Ochako shook her head violently, her breath starting to accelerate in pace. Her thumb trembled over the reply button. Did she dare? It was a breach of his privacy even to read the text. But, Ochako reasoned, I could know who Izuku likes. Ochako shook the thought, hand moving to pocket the phone. She had gone far enough. Ochako reached for the door handle once more, but like the last couple times, her hand froze. I could solve all my problems, right now, she thought. With a groan, Ochako pulled the phone back out of her pocket and hastily clicked the reply button. With shaky hands, it took her way longer to respond than it should have. Who? She hit send before she gave herself time to reconsider. Ochako couldn't breathe as she saw the telltale set of three gray dots, signifying that the red-haired student was typing back. After what felt like an eternity, the reply finally came. Don't play dumb with me, Midoriya. You know how I'm talking about. Uraraka. Ochako repressed a squeal when she saw the reply, dropping the phone in surprise. Ochako felt like she was having a muttering spree, except for in her head. Oh my god. Oh my god. Deku L likes me. What? Ochako was basically in denial. She was ripped from her panic by the phone buzzing on her phone once more. Entire arm shaking with a combination of shock and joy, Ochako picked back up the phone. I mean, Bakugo made a bet that you wouldn't confess by the end of the week. Don't make me lost money. Ochako let out a shaky laugh. It seemed just like her classmates to make a bet on something like that. Ochako forced herself to reply. Okay was the simple response. With joy-filled hands, Ochako deleted the messages she and Kirishima had shared, so that Izuku wouldn't know she had been snooping. Practically skipping with joy, Ochako finally left the room, Izuku's phone in hand, towards the practice field. The entire trip, there was one question on her mind. When, how, is he going to do it? She asked herself. With determination on her face, she made herself a promise. If he doesn't do it by this time next week, she steeled herself, clenching her fist in determination, I'll have to do it myself. Chapter 4. The days leading up to the festival blew by before Ochako even knew it. She started every morning with a run with Izuku, before moving on to early morning quirk practice and combo training for the festival. Ochako was still not used to getting up hours before her body was used to. She was tired in the mornings, but she could start to see the fruits of her labor coming to fruition. She was able to run the 4 miles without getting as winded as before, but she was still tired afterwards. When she had expressed her concerns to Izuku that she wasn't improving as fast as she had hoped, he had reassured her. It won't happen immediately. It took me 10 months to go from the point where I was as a little scrawny kid to being even able to run 6 miles. He had given her a big smile. You'll get it. Ochako hadn't been convinced initially, but had decided to go with it whatever it takes to become a hero. A hero like Deku. Everyone in the class had been extremely secretive over the last few days, not wanting to risk anyone figuring out their secret techniques. There were reports of groups going out to the forest nearby, a 5-mile walk, just to ensure their strategies were not discovered. Luckily for Ochako and Izuku, nobody wanted to get up so early in the morning just to spy on the possibility of some sort of insight. Much to Izuku's dismay, there had been an oversight found in the tournament bracket. The teachers had not realized that 10 groups in the first round would leave an odd number of teams in the second round. So, there had been an edit to the bracket made. Instead of the first day holding 5 matches, the first day now only held 2. The teachers had wanted to ensure that the teams would be facing similar enemies as before, so they had tried to make the matches all the same. Who would be going first was determined by random number drawing, as the teams that went on the first day would be at a distinct disadvantage, having to play an extra match to get to the path. And with Ochako's great luck, she and Izuku had been chosen. So, their first match was against Yaoyorozu and Toru. Ochako and Izuku were on their way to the arena now, but they were the second match of the day. The competition was being held on the same playing field as the sports festival. Ochako was walking alongside Izuku as they walked towards the entrance to the stands. Izuku had been adamant about watching the other first match before moving to the pre-staging area. So, if we win this first match, then we are guaranteed to go against Su and Denki for our second match. Izuku had his hand on his chin as he walked, once again enveloped in a spree of muttering. Ochako carefully squeezed his arm, to get his attention, but just as she expected, Izuku didn't respond. Ah! She groaned, grabbing Izuku's arm and yanking him in the right direction. He had nearly walked straight by the staircase. Ah! He yelped as he was forcefully veered off of course. Stop worrying about a match that we don't even need to worry about yet. Ochako chastised, mild annoyance in her tone. Let's go watch the first match. Izuku was dragged by his forearm up the entire staircase and into the bleachers. They stepped out into the open air inside the arena to see that it was still full of people. Sure, there weren't nearly as many people in the arena as there was during the sports festival, but every other seat was taken up. Ochako scanned the area for a sign of her friends, catching the eye of Iida, who was sitting next to 2 open seats. Ochako smiled and yanked Izuku with her over to their seats, where she happily plopped down in a chair. Only then did she finally let go of Izuku's arm. Ow! He muttered, rubbing the spot where Ochako had been grasping his arm. Ochako giggled, ecstatic for some reason. Don't mutter and almost go the wrong way then, dummy. She teased. Izuku barely got his signature notebook out before Present Mike's voice rang out over the entire arena. Are you ready? His naturally loud voice, made only worse by his quirk, took up the entire arena, filling the area relentlessly with sound. Even louder, however, was the roar of the crowd as the 2 teams stepped out onto the field. All 4 of the contestants were wearing the traditional blues, reds, and whites of the standard PE uniform for UA, but there was an obvious difference between the 2 teams. Tokiyami and Todoroki looked so calm. Izuku noticed, looking down at the field below them. It was true. The 2 strode out onto the tan ground with confidence in their step, no hesitation in their movements. Kota and Sato, on the other hand, Iida said, trailing off. Their steps were much more hesitant, and Kota's arms even looked like he was shivering slightly. They look, Ochako realized, almost with horror. Terrified, Izuku finished, eyes not leaving the scene. All contestants arrived on the field. Just like last time, Midnight was watching over the match, with Smintos on the ready. Ready, start. Present Mike screeched. Todoroki calmly took a step forwards, ice collecting at his feet. The ice sped across the ground, growing in size, gaining speed. Ochako watched, speechless, as the ice shot from the ground, making the massive ice wall Todoroki had used many times. She could see him calmly let out a frosty breath. Koda, Sato, can you move? Midnight asked. The answer was obvious, though. The two were stuck in the massive block of ice. And no, Sato replied. Then the victory goes to Tokiyami and Todoroki. Midnight yelled, raising her whip on her right side. The crowd stood in shocked silence, staring at the massive display, before erupting into cheers. It was over in an instant, huh? Ochako said, voice shaky. Izuku just nodded, shutting his notebook. The connotation was obvious. No amount of notes is going to help against that, Ochako realized. Izuku stood on shaky legs. Let's go get ready, he said, starting to walk away. Ochako followed close behind. Izuku sat in the preparation room alone with Ochako. He was staring at the table in front of him, eyes distant. Ochako hated seeing him like this. With all of her heart. When Izuku got like this, it was hard to pull him out again. His mind was over-analyzing the situation, overthinking it. Ochako could see in his eyes that he felt hopeless, not even knowing what to do, so Ochako did the only thing that felt right. She rested her hand on his on the table, squeezing gently. Izuku looked up, looking Ochako in the eyes. Hey, we'll worry about that later. I know it's intimidating. I know it's hard to think about how to go against that. But for now, we need to focus on this first match. She said, trying to sound as encouraging as possible. As Deku as possible. Izuku nodded, forcing a smile. Ochako could tell when he did that. You remember what the strategy is, right? He asked. Talking seemed to get his mind off of the intimidating match that had just transpired. Yep, Ochako said, throwing a fist into the air, every last bit. Izuku smiled, and this time it was genuine. Sometimes, you just need a little encouragement. Ochako thought to herself. There was a knock on the door. Let's go. It's match time. A voice called. Izuku looked Ochako right in the eyes. You ready? Was his simple question. Ochako steeled herself, reinforcing her will. Yes, she said, jumping out of her seat. Whatever she had done, Izuku was back to his normal self. He stood up, and Ochako saw the determination in his eyes. The determination that she had fallen for, all those weeks and months ago. Ochako grabbed Izuku's arm gently, looking him right in the eyes. Remember, you're my hero, Deku. Let's go out there and show everyone who's boss. Ochako held her fist out in front of her. Izuku smiled once again, eyes fierce. I won't let you down. Izuku and Uraraka walked out from the tunnel into the bright light of midday. The sun was right overhead, beating down on the teenagers as they strolled across the grass onto the stone staircase. Izuku looked over at Uraraka, seeing the determination in her eyes. He had seen this amount of resolve in the young woman once before. In her fight with Bakugo. Just seeing her strength of will made Izuku's own fortify. I won't let you down, Uraraka. Izuku strode up the staircase with confidence, chest puffed out. All of the encouragement he had received ran through his head, stealing Izuku more and more. You can do it. His classmates' encouragement rang through his head. Tell the world, I am here. All Might's words rang in his ears. Maybe not that yet, but this might be enough for now, Izuku said, almost hoping his mentor would hear him. You're my hero, Deku. The words that inspired him the most bounced around in Izuku's mind. Uraraka's words of encouragement, to help him, even though she was just as worried as he. Izuku stepped onto the sandy dirt field with confidence, chin up. Are you ready? Present Mike's voice rang over the battlefield. Izuku looked up from the ground in front of him to look up at Ochako, who nodded. Izuku looked up to the press box and gave a short nod, then begin. The call rang over the field. Neither Izuku or Uraraka moved, waiting to see what their opponent's first move was. Yaoyorozu stayed still, while Toru took off her gloves, kicking off her shoes. Just as we thought, Izuku smirked. Izuku channeled an immediate 8% one for all full cowl. First step, interrupt the creator. Izuku raised his arm, channeling a burst of energy to his hand, elevating the energy of one for all in his finger to 20% for the briefest of moments. Izuku flicked, unleashing a maelstrom of wind pressure at his enemies. Yaoyorozu looked up with shock at the blast of wind flying at her, throwing up an improvised shield last moment to deflect the wind. Izuku smirked again. Good. Use up your resources. Izuku looked to Uraraka, who gave a short nod. She kneeled down, pressing her fingers to the dirt. Izuku started to move his foot back and forth, as fast as he could. Dirt shot up out of the ground, floating to fill the area. The dust stayed airborne due to Uraraka's quirk. More, Izuku told himself, channeling 12% into his right foot, amplifying its speed. More and more dust shot up, filling the area faster and faster. When Izuku felt like he couldn't keep it up any longer, he let up, stopping the rapid movement. Where his foot had been was a crater about a foot deep and 2 feet long. All the sandy dirt that had been in that area was absent. Instead, filling up the field was a cloud of dust. Uraraka stood up. What's this? A shroud of dust particles. Present Mike's voice boomed through the arena. Where are you? Izuku muttered, scanning the area for movement. Although Izuku couldn't see to the other end of the field, so he couldn't see what Yaoyorozu was doing, but now it didn't matter. This shroud wasn't for her. In the corner of his eye, Izuku saw a flicker of movement as the dust particles parted way. A figure moved through the shroud, as the floating specks of dirt made a path. Uraraka, over there. Izuku pointed behind her to her left, where the movement originated from. Uraraka turned on her heel just fast enough, as Toru was coming up behind Uraraka. Uraraka pressed her hand against the gap in the dust, connecting with something. Suddenly, there was a soft yell as Uraraka shoved back against the mass, sending Toru flying out of the dust cloud once again. Toru is out of bounds. Midnight called. With a gasp, Uraraka pressed her hands together, releasing Toru so she didn't go flying into any walls, also releasing all of the dust in the air at the same time. Uraraka collapsed onto her knees from holding up so much mass for so long. Izuku started to rush over to her side, on instinct alone. Uraraka looked up, glaring at him. I'm fine, she forced out, before pointing to the other side of the field. Focus, Deku. On the other side of the field, Yaoyorozu stood behind her makeshift bunker with a cannon next to her. Shit, Izuku thought, diving to the ground as a cannonball sailed past where he had been standing a moment ago. Izuku dove next to Uraraka as another cannonball sailed past. Izuku channeled another blast of energy through his finger, unleashing a blast of wind once again. When the wind calmed, however, Yaoyorozu sat, unscathed behind her barrier. We gave her too much time. Izuku muttered. Did you think I didn't know about your little wind attack? Yaoyorozu taunted from across the field. Do you really think Toru wouldn't go and spy on you while you were practicing? Izuku's heart dropped. How could I not realize that? Stupid, stupid, stupid. Izuku looked over to Uraraka. Can you stand? He asked. Uraraka tried to, but fell back to the ground when she tried. No, sorry Deku, she said, disappointment in her tone obvious. It's okay. Izuku grunted as he blasted away a cannonball with his wind blast. Can you make me lighter? He asked. Uraraka seemed to consider for a moment before reaching out weakly and pressing her hand against Izuku's leg. Izuku felt his weight half. I owe you one. Izuku said, standing up tall, hopping from foot to foot as Yaoyorozu reloaded her personal cannon. Go get him, Tiger, Uraraka said. Wait for an opening. Izuku told himself, feeling one for all fill his limbs. 5%, 8%. When she is vulnerable, Izuku watched as Yaoyorozu prepared to launch the cannon once more, aiming it right for Izuku. Izuku pushed his bounds. 12%. When she's about to fire, Izuku dashed forward as fast as his lightened legs would carry him. Time seemed to slow for him as he dashed around the right side of the field, cannonball sailing through the spot he had been moments before. Izuku made a break straight for the cannon, grabbing the front of the barrel before it could fire again. Amplifying the power in his hand to 20%, Izuku crushed the entire front of the cannon, crumpling it. He let the power die down in his hand, instead punching the barrier with all the force of one for all 12%. Even though it was anchored to the ground, it went sailing out of the ground. Izuku turned to Yaoyorozu, who to his eyes seemed to be moving more sluggish than even normal. She had a large bar for a weapon and a personal shield. Izuku almost laughed. I fought Hero Killer, Stain, an expert in one-on-one combat. This is nothing. The thought almost seemed like something Bakugo would say. Izuku dashed behind Yaoyorozu, hoping to bait her into turning around, just like he had with Stain. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw her start to turn to him. Good. Sorry, Momo, but I can't let Uraraka down, he thought as he used his other foot to propel himself off the ground, sailing above Yaoyorozu. Detroit. Izuku reared his hand back, collecting energy in his arm. Smash. Izuku threw his fist down, where it made contact with the side of Yaoyorozu's face. With a blast of wind and force, she flew into the ground, making a small crater. Izuku finished his mid-air flip, landing square on his feet. Yaoyorozu laid in a small hole in the ground, not moving, but still breathing. Yaoyorozu is unconscious. The winners are Uraraka and Midoriya. Midnight called, raising her flag. Izuku collapsed onto the ground, sitting down. He looked over to where Uraraka was sitting, trying to force herself to her feet. Even though his tired legs protested, Izuku forced himself to jog over to her, grabbing her by the shoulder and letting her put her weight onto him. That was so good, Deku, she praised, voice weak. You did just as good. Holding that much weight for so long, then making me lighter. That was so amazing, he said, causing a blush to appear on her face. She smiled at him, a genuine, happy smile. One match down, huh? She said. I could look at that smile all day. Izuku told himself, staring into her eyes. Yeah, only 3 more to win the whole thing. Izuku said jokingly. I hope they're not all this tiring. She joked back. A few people burst out onto the field, carrying a stretcher for Yaoyorozu. I might have gone a little overboard there, he said, suddenly feeling bad for knocking his friend out cold like that. No, you did what was reasonable, she assured him, suddenly collapsing on her leg. I guess I'm much more tired than even I thought. Let's get to the medical ward. Make sure nothing is wrong with either of us. Good idea. And with that, Izuku helped Ochako walk tiredly to the medical ward, smiling the entire time. Izuku and Uraraka made it back to the medical ward, and were happy to see that neither of them had any injuries. You just need a nap, Recovery Girl insisted, shooing them out the door. Leave so I can tend to Miss Yaoyorozu. Izuku scratched the back of his neck nervously as they left the room. I really hope she's okay and I didn't go overboard with that, Izuku muttered. You were just doing what you needed to win, Deku. Uraraka comforted with a yawn. Izuku stayed silent. I could have eased up on the hit, he scolded himself. The two walked in silence, not having the energy to strike up a conversation, no matter how much they wanted to. Izuku arrived at the dorm room, pulling open the door. He was met with applause from everyone. Bravo! Bravo Midoriya and Uraraka! Bravo! Iida said, yelling over the clapping hands. You guys fought great. Both teams did. Izuku felt his face flush at the unexpected welcoming party. Thanks everyone, he said, still supporting most of Uraraka's weight. You guys killed it, Toru said, stepping out from the crowd, that cloud of dust. Didn't expect it at all. Thanks, Toru, Uraraka said. There was some chatter from the group concerning the battle. They look beat. Let's let them rest, Kirishima noticed, gesturing to Uraraka putting most of her weight on Deku. There was a murmur of agreement from the crowd, until someone waved their hands, stepping out from the crowd. Hey, there's something I want to say. Denki Kaminari stepped out from the crowd. You may have fought well today, but... He trailed off, looking Izuku and Uraraka in the eyes in turn. I won't let you win tomorrow. Izuku looked his friend in the eyes, seeing the determination in his expression. Izuku raised his hand in challenge, but before he could say anything, Uraraka moved. You're on, Pikachu, she said, raising her fist in challenge, just like Izuku. So determined to win. Izuku marveled at her resolve. The room burst with laughter at how Uraraka had Kallen Kaminari, Pikachu. Izuku couldn't help but laugh as his friend's face flushed to pink from embarrassment. Hey, wait, she's the one that usually does that to me. Izuku couldn't help but feel a little jealous, especially considering that Denki had tried to ask Uraraka out one time. Anyways, Let's let them go relax. Iida interrupted again. This time, the crowd parted way for Izuku and Uraraka to go to the stairs. Izuku helped Uraraka up the stairs all the way to her room. You don't have to, Deku. She protested as they passed his floor. Oh, yes I do. He said, if I let you go up there alone, you'd probably collapse on the ground. Uraraka blushed at the comment, but allowed Izuku to help her up to her room. They got to the fourth floor, where Uraraka unlocked her door. Izuku came in her room and helped her over to her bed, where she plopped onto the soft mattress with a groan. I'm going to take a nap, she said. Izuku let out a little grunt. Me too, but I'll take a shower first. I prefer not to make my room smell like garbage. Uraraka laughed softly. Izuku made for the door, wanting to get to his room. He reached out for the handle, where his hand froze. I'm alone with Uraraka right now. He realized. He stayed frozen on the spot. I could tell her everything, and nobody would interrupt. Izuku was feeling strangely confident. Maybe it was leftover dopamine and adrenaline from his victory. Maybe it was something else. Izuku didn't know what possessed him to turn around, but he did. Hey rar! He cut himself off. Uraraka was laying on her bed, still fully clothed, but sound asleep. The slow rise and fall of her chest was constant, and she looked beat. Izuku sighed softly. She looks pristine. Izuku thought to himself when he looked at Uraraka. He shook his head and turned around. Next time, he told himself, reaching for the door handle, opening it and stepping out into the hallway. Where stories live. Discover now.